They whispered she was nothing more than decoration. When Maxxine Dupree stepped into the spotlight challenging Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Women's Championship, the internet exploded with mockery and disbelief. Critics sharpened their keyboards, veterans questioned her credentials, and even casual fans scrolled past her name without a second thought. She was dismissed as someone playing dress-up in a world built for warriors. But Monday Night Raw became the stage where Maxxine Dupree shattered every low expectation and rewrote her entire narrative in the most unbelievable way imaginable. And before we dive deeper into this insanity, make sure you're subscribed to Wrestling Discuss because we bring you the breakdowns that matter when wrestling history gets turned upside down. The arena lights blazed as Becky Lynch made her entrance, championship gold draped over her shoulder, confidence radiating from every step she took toward that squared circle. The man had conquered everyone who dared step up. Rhea Ripley fell. Bianca Belair couldn't overcome her. Charlotte Flair tried and failed. Becky stood alone at the mountaintop, untouchable and seemingly invincible. She had earned every ounce of arrogance she displayed, backing up her words with brutal victories week after week. When she grabbed that microphone during pre-match promos, her message was crystal clear. Maxxine Dupree wasn't a threat. She was an inconvenience. A speed bump on the road to greater challenges. Becky didn't just plan to win. She planned to embarrass Maxxine in front of the world. The champion's entrance was pure theater. She walked with that swagger that only comes from being at the absolute top of your profession. Every gesture, every glance into the camera, every smirk directed at the crowd reinforced her position as the most dominant woman in the company. Becky had held the championship through blood, sweat, and countless battles that would have broken lesser competitors. She survived ladder matches that left her body bruised and battered. She endured submission matches where her joints were twisted to their breaking points. She walked through fire and came out the other side still holding gold. That championship wasn't just a belt around her waist. It was an extension of her identity. It represented everything she had sacrificed and overcome to reach this pinnacle. Then Maxxine's music hit and the reaction was split down the middle. Half the crowd cheered for the underdog spirit she represented. The other half sat in skeptical silence, arms crossed, waiting for the inevitable demolition. Maxxine walked out with determination etched across her face, but even she must have heard the whispers. Even she must have felt the weight of doubt pressing down on her shoulders. Years of grinding through developmental territories, enduring the maximum male models comedy act that people laughed at instead of with, taking every criticism and converting it into fuel for her training sessions that stretched into the early morning hours. She studied match tapes until her eyes burned. She worked with coaches who pushed her past breaking points. Slowly, methodically, she transformed herself from someone people giggled at into someone they couldn't ignore. The journey to this moment had been brutal for Maxxine. She arrived in the company with hopes and dreams like every other aspiring superstar. But instead of being given opportunities to showcase her abilities, she was placed in a comedic role that many viewed as career suicide. The maximum male model's gimmick was designed to get laughs, not to build credible competitors. Every week she had to go out there and play a character that the audience didn't take seriously. Behind the scenes, other women in the locker room wondered if she was serious about wrestling or just there for the paycheck and exposure. That doubt fueled something dark and determined inside her. She started arriving at the performance center hours before anyone else. She stayed long after everyone left. She worked with trainers on striking combinations, submission holds, high-flying maneuvers, and the psychology of storytelling in the ring. She absorbed knowledge like a sponge, determined to prove that she belonged in this business at the highest level. The bell rang and Becky wasted zero time asserting dominance. She rushed across the ring and backed Maxxine into the corner with a barrage of forearms that echoed through the arena. Each strike was calculated to hurt and humiliate. Becky was putting on a clinic of veteran superiority, showing the world exactly why she held that championship. She grabbed Maxxine and launched her with a textbook suplex that rattled the canvas. Commentary teams questioned whether officials should consider stopping this mismatch before serious damage occurred. Becky circled her opponent like a predator toying with prey, talking trash, slapping Maxxine across the face, daring her to show any sign of fight. The crowd cringed with each disrespectful blow. This was going exactly how everyone predicted. Becky was methodical in her destruction. She wasn't rushing to end the match. She wanted to send a message to the entire locker room that challenging her was a mistake that would result in humiliation. She dragged Maxxine up by her hair and threw her into the turnbuckles with force that made the ring post shake. She followed up with running knees that drove the air from Maxxine's lungs. She applied a headlock and cranked down on it while shouting insults that the front row could hear clearly. Becky was putting on a masterclass in psychological warfare, breaking down her opponent mentally before finishing her physically. The referee checked on Maxxine multiple times, asking if she wanted to continue. Each time, Maxxine nodded weakly, refusing to quit despite the punishment she was absorbing. But something shifted in that moment of degradation. When Becky wound up for another slap, Maxxine's hand shot up and blocked it. The shock registered on Becky's face for a split second before Maxxine blocked another strike, then ducked under a clothesline attempt and hit the ropes with explosive speed. She came back with a dropkick that actually made Becky Lynch stumble backward. The entire building gasped in unison. Nobody expected that. Maxxine didn't give her opponent time to recover. She unleashed a combination of boxing strikes mixed with brutal knee lifts that showcased training nobody knew she possessed. Each shot landed with bad intentions. Each movement was crisp and aggressive. Becky found herself on the defensive for the first time in months. The transformation was stunning. Maxxine moved with a confidence and skill that seemed to come from nowhere. Her footwork was precise. Her timing was impeccable. She was reading Becky's movements and countering before the champion could fully execute her offense. A spinning back elbow caught Becky flush on the jaw. A jumping knee strike sent her reeling into the ropes. Maxxine was on fire, unleashing everything she had learned during those countless hours of training. The crowd was coming alive, starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were about to witness something special. The energy in the building shifted from morbid curiosity to genuine excitement. The champion regrouped quickly though, because you don't hold the title by panicking under pressure. Becky swept Maxxine's legs out from under her and followed up with a guillotine leg drop that shook the ring. She went back to work methodically breaking down her challenger. What followed over the next 15 minutes was an absolute war that had fans on the edge of their seats. These women beat each other senseless. Maxxine refused to quit. Every time Becky hit a signature move that should have ended the match, Maxxine's shoulder came off the mat. The crowd's support grew louder with each kick-out. They were witnessing something special. They were watching a star force herself into existence through sheer willpower. The back-and-forth action was intense and unrelenting. Becky would gain control and punish Maxxine with a series of devastating moves. She hit a Bexploder suplex that sent Maxxine flying across the ring. She locked in a leg submission that had Maxxine howling in pain. She delivered rapid-fire strikes in the corner that left Maxxine's chest bright red and welted. But every time it seemed like the end was near, Maxxine found something deep inside herself to keep fighting. She would fire back with desperation moves that caught Becky off guard. A surprise jawbreaker here. A roll-up attempt there. Each counter buying her precious seconds to recover and mount another offensive flurry. Maxxine hit a tornado DDT that got a near fall so close people thought the match was over. She locked in a crossface submission that had Becky scrambling desperately toward the ropes. This wasn't survival anymore. Maxxine was competing at a level that proved every doubter wrong. But Becky Lynch didn't become champion by accident. She's a ring general with years of experience in these high-pressure situations. She started targeting Maxxine's arm with surgical precision, the same arm needed for her finishing maneuver. Becky slammed it against the ring post repeatedly. She bent it in unnatural angles. She drove it into the steel steps on the outside. Every movement was designed to remove Maxxine's most dangerous weapon while inflicting maximum psychological damage. The strategy was brilliant and cruel. Becky wrapped Maxxine's arm around the middle rope and pulled back with all her weight, stretching ligaments and tendons past their limits. She stomped on the elbow joint repeatedly. She applied an armbar on the ring apron, one of the hardest parts of the ring, maximizing the damage. Maxxine's face contorted in agony with each attack. Her arm was turning different shades of red and purple. The commentary team discussed how this methodical destruction might have long-term consequences for Maxxine's career. Becky was trying to break her in every sense of the word. Maxxine clutched her injured arm in visible agony as Becky set up for the manhandle slam. The move that has ended countless championship defenses. The move that symbolizes Becky's dominance over the entire division. She lifted Maxxine up into position, but the challenger fought out with desperate elbows from her good arm. She landed behind Becky and shoved her into the ropes. Becky bounced back and Maxxine attempted a quick roll-up. The referee counted 1, 2, and Becky just barely kicked out. Frustration was building now. The champion was getting angry that this match hadn't ended yet. She charged at Maxxine with a clothesline, but Maxxine ducked and Becky's momentum carried her over the top rope to the floor. Maxxine saw her opportunity and climbed to the top turnbuckle despite her damaged arm. The crowd rose to their feet as she measured the distance. She leaped off with a crossbody that crashed into Becky on the outside and both women went down hard on the unforgiving floor. The referee started his count as both competitors struggled to get their bearings. They barely rolled back into the ring before reaching 10. Exhaustion was written all over both their faces. The damage was accumulating with every exchange. They were running purely on adrenaline and pride at this point. Both women lay on the canvas for several moments, chests heaving, bodies screaming for relief. The referee checked on both of them, making sure they could continue. Maxxine used the ropes to pull herself up, her injured arm hanging limply at her side. Becky used the turnbuckles for support, her own body showing the effects of this brutal contest. They locked eyes from across the ring and there was a moment of unspoken understanding. Both women knew they were in the fight of their lives. Both women knew this match would define their legacies moving forward. They met in the center of the ring and started trading strikes in a sequence that had the crowd chanting in appreciation. Forearms, slaps, punches, neither woman willing to back down an inch. Becky gained the advantage and immediately went for the disarm, her devastating submission finisher that has made so many opponents tap out. She locked it in tight right in the middle of the ring. Maxxine was trapped with nowhere to go. Her already injured arm was being twisted in ways arms shouldn't bend. The referee kept asking if she wanted to quit. The crowd begged her not to tap out. And Maxxine, showing a level of heart that surprised everyone watching, started crawling toward the ropes. Every inch was earned through pure determination. Becky wrenched back harder, trying to force the submission. The veins in her neck stood out from the effort she was putting into breaking Maxxine's will. She screamed at Maxxine to tap, to give up, to admit she didn't belong here. But Maxxine kept crawling, dragging both her own body weight and Becky's toward that bottom rope. Her face was a mask of pain and determination. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she refused to quit. The crowd was on their feet, willing her to make it. Her fingertips stretched out, reaching desperately for salvation. And finally, mercifully, Maxxine's fingers touched the bottom rope and the referee called for the break. Becky couldn't believe it. She released the hold and stood up, hands on her hips, staring down at Maxxine with a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. She pulled Maxxine up by her hair and started screaming in her face, telling her to stay down, telling her she didn't belong in this ring. That verbal assault gave Maxxine just enough time to gather herself. She exploded with a headbutt that caught Becky completely off guard. The champion stumbled backward. Maxxine followed up with a super kick that connected flush. Becky was dazed and wobbling. Maxxine used her last reserves of energy to climb to the top rope again, going for her finishing move despite the damaged arm screaming in protest. She launched herself off with a picture-perfect moonsault. The rotation was flawless. She crashed down across Becky and hooked the leg with her good arm. The referee slid into position and counted 1, 2, and Becky kicked out at the absolute last possible millisecond. The arena erupted in shock. Nobody could process what they were watching. Maxxine Dupree was not only surviving against Becky Lynch, she was pushing the champion to limits nobody thought possible. Both women lay on the canvas completely spent, chests heaving, bodies battered beyond belief. The atmosphere was electric. Fans were standing, holding their breath with every movement these warriors made. This had transcended a simple championship match. This had become a test of wills, a battle of who wanted it more, who could endure more punishment and still find a way to continue. Both women had given everything they had and somehow still needed to find more. They used each other to pull themselves up to their feet, leaning on one another in what almost seemed like mutual respect for the battle they were having. Then Becky shoved Maxxine away and set up for another manhandle slam. She lifted the challenger up into position. This had to be the end. There was no way Maxxine could survive this. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. The lights in the entire arena suddenly went out. Complete darkness swallowed everything. The crowd's confusion turned into electric anticipation. When the lights came back on just seconds later, there was someone standing in the ring who hadn't been there before. AJ Lee stood directly behind Becky Lynch. The reaction was absolutely explosive. Fans lost their minds. AJ Lee, the woman who held the Divas Championship for nearly 300 days, the woman who revolutionized what women's wrestling could be before the revolution even had a name, was back in a WWE ring for the first time in almost 10 years. She wore her signature gear and that mischievous smile that made her a legend. Becky was still holding Maxxine in the air, completely unaware of who was behind her. When she turned around and came face to face with AJ Lee, her expression shifted through shock, confusion, and something that looked like fear. The visual was surreal. AJ looked exactly as fans remembered her. That presence, that aura, that undeniable charisma that made her one of the most popular women in WWE history. Her return was something people had dreamed about but never expected to actually happen. And here she was, standing in the middle of the ring at the most crucial moment of this championship match. The questions were already racing through everyone's minds. How was this possible? Why now? What did this mean for the future? Becky dropped Maxxine immediately. AJ just stood there smiling, not moving, just staring directly into the champion's eyes. The referee didn't know what to do. Becky started yelling, demanding to know what AJ was doing in her ring, telling her to get out. AJ took one step forward, then another. Becky backed up and that's when AJ struck with the Shining Wizard, the devastating knee strike that had finished so many of her opponents in the past. Becky crumpled to the mat. The referee started calling for the bell but AJ grabbed his arm and whispered something. The referee looked conflicted but nodded. The match would continue. AJ rolled out of the ring and disappeared into the crowd as mysteriously as she had appeared. Maxxine Dupree, who had been recovering in the corner, slowly processed what just happened. She saw Becky Lynch laid out. She saw her opportunity. With her damaged arm and every remaining ounce of strength, Maxxine crawled across the ring and draped her arm over Becky's chest. The referee dropped down and counted 1, 2, 3. The bell rang. The arena exploded into absolute chaos. Maxxine Dupree had just pinned Becky Lynch. Maxxine Dupree was the new Intercontinental Women's Champion. The referee placed the title in her hands and she clutched it to her chest as tears streamed down her face. She couldn't believe it. Against every odd, against every prediction, with an assist from a returning legend, Maxxine Dupree achieved her dream. The emotion was raw and real. She had climbed the mountain that everyone said was too high for her. She had proven that heart and determination could overcome doubt and dismissal. As she held that championship, the weight of her journey hit her all at once. Every insult, every setback, every moment of being told she wasn't good enough led to this singular moment of triumph. But this victory opens up 1,000 questions that demand answers. Why did AJ Lee return after all these years away from wrestling? Why did she specifically help Maxxine? What connects these two women? AJ retired in 2015 citing injuries and went on to become a mental health advocate and best-selling author. She seemed completely finished with this business. Her husband CM Punk had a complicated and often hostile relationship with WWE for years. So why now? Why this exact moment? Why this particular person? The mystery surrounding AJ's motivations adds layers of intrigue to an already explosive situation. During her time away from wrestling, AJ became an entirely different person in the public eye. She focused on her writing, her advocacy work, and her personal life. She gave interviews where she seemed content being away from the ring and the demands of WWE's schedule. There was never any indication she had interest in returning, which makes her appearance last night even more shocking and confusing. What changed? What brought her back? And most importantly, what does she want? Theories are spreading across social media like wildfire. Some believe AJ has been secretly mentoring Maxxine for months behind the scenes. Others think this is the formation of a new faction that will dominate the women's division. Fans are speculating that AJ might have personal history with Becky Lynch that has never been revealed. Everyone wants to know if this was a one-time appearance or if AJ Lee is truly back in WWE for the long haul. The implications are staggering no matter which theory proves correct. For Maxxine Dupree, this represents both the greatest and most complicated moment of her entire career. She's the champion. She achieved what she's worked toward for years. But there will always be an asterisk next to this victory in people's minds. Critics will say she didn't really beat Becky Lynch. They'll claim she needed outside interference. They'll question whether her championship reign has any legitimacy. Maxxine will have to prove herself all over again, but now with an even bigger target painted on her back. Every woman in that locker room will be coming for her, trying to expose her as a weak champion, attempting to prove her victory was nothing but a fluke. The challenge ahead of Maxxine is monumental. She went into this match as an underdog that nobody took seriously. She'll wake up this morning as a champion that nobody respects. That's a difficult position to navigate. She'll have to defend this title against the best women in the world while simultaneously proving she deserves to hold it. Every match will be scrutinized. Every victory will be questioned. If she wins convincingly, people will say her opponent had an off night. If she struggles, people will say it proves she's not champion material. There's no easy path forward for her. Becky Lynch is going to be absolutely nuclear when she processes what happened. The man does not handle controversial losses well. She's going to demand an immediate rematch. She'll want revenge on both Maxxine and AJ Lee. This could evolve into a triple threat match at the next major event, or we might see AJ and Maxxine team up against Becky and a partner she chooses. The booking possibilities are endless and every single option is exciting. Charlotte Flair will demand her title opportunity. Rhea Ripley won't stand on the sidelines. Bianca Belair is going to want her shot. The entire women's division just got flipped completely upside down and Maxxine Dupree sits at the center of the storm. The ramifications extend beyond just the women's division. This moment has captured the attention of the entire wrestling world. Mainstream media outlets are picking up the story of AJ Lee's surprise return. Social media platforms are flooded with reactions, theories, and debates about what this means for the future. WWE has lightning in a bottle right now, and how they handle this situation over the next few weeks could determine the trajectory of multiple careers. The pressure on creative teams, on the performers involved, and on management to capitalize on this momentum is immense. We also can't ignore the massive elephant in the room. CM Punk currently works for WWE. His wife AJ Lee just returned after almost a decade away. Are they going to interact on screen? Could this lead to a power couple storyline? Might we see AJ and Punk managing Maxxine together as a unit? The creative possibilities are absolutely mind-blowing, and WWE would be foolish not to capitalize on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What happened on Monday Night Raw wasn't just a title change. It was a complete paradigm shift. It was proof that in wrestling, anything can happen when you least expect it. It was a reminder that legends can return and change everything in an instant. It was validation for everyone who has ever been told they're not good enough, not ready, not worthy. Maxxine Dupree proved that with heart, determination, and maybe a little help when you need it most, dreams actually can come true. The wrestling world will be talking about this moment for years. Historians will debate whether this was the catalyst that changed the entire landscape of women's wrestling, and we got to witness it happen in real time. This is why we watch. This is why we invest our emotions into these storylines. This is why wrestling matters to millions of people around the world. Because on any given night, history can be made and lives can be changed forever. The beauty of what happened is that it worked on multiple levels. For longtime fans who remember AJ Lee's incredible run, seeing her back was an emotional rush of nostalgia and excitement. For newer fans who only know her from stories and highlight videos, this was their introduction to a legend who lived up to every bit of hype. For Maxxine Dupree, this was career validation. And for Becky Lynch, this sets up potentially the most personal and heated rivalry of her championship reign. Everyone benefits from this story, and that's the mark of brilliant storytelling in professional wrestling. The questions moving forward are fascinating. How will Maxxine handle being champion? Will she embrace the controversial nature of her victory, or will she be haunted by it? How will Becky Lynch seek revenge? Will she target Maxxine, AJ, or both? What are AJ's true intentions? Is she here to help build new stars, or does she have her own championship aspirations? And how will the rest of the women's division react to these massive shake-ups? Every single answer will have consequences that ripple through the entire company. If you love wrestling as much as we do here at Ring Rumble, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because we're building something special. We break down every shocking moment, every surprising return, every championship change with the depth and passion it deserves. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop new content, because in this business, history can be made at any second and you'll want to be here for all of it. Maxxine Dupree is your Intercontinental Women's Champion. AJ Lee is back. Becky Lynch wants blood. The women's division is on fire, and this is only the beginning.